Over on Jaguar Gator 8, a new college football video is out. In this video, we talk about college football's version of the Heidi game, where at the 1989 John Hancock Bowl, a Mexican TV station cut away from the game early, leaving fans outraged. Click the card in the upper right corner to watch. And now, on with our feature presentation. In 1982, the Dallas Cowboys had another highly successful season, where they were once again one of the best teams in football. Even though 1982 was bizarre, weird, and wacky in a variety of ways, from the strike halting play for 2 months, to the fact that only 9 games were played, to the fact that there was a winless team, to the fact that the defending Super Bowl champions, San Francisco 49ers, looked like one of the worst teams in football, one thing remained consistent, and served as the one sense of normalcy in not normal times. And that was the fact that the Cowboys were near the cream of the crop, and were near the top of the league. They have the second best record in the NFC, finishing the season as the number 2 seed with a 6-3 record. They have the best point differential in all of football at plus 81. They have the best offense in the NFC by leading the conference with 226 points scored, or over 25 points per game. They have the third best defense in the NFL by only allowing 145 points, or just over 16 points per game. And they were just a really good team all the way around. And for the third consecutive season, and for the 5th time in the last 6 seasons, and for the 10th time in the last 13 seasons since the merger, which seems absolutely ridiculous, they made it to the NFC Championship, appearing in the final step to get to the Super Bowl. And there were many reasons for why the Cowboys were able to go on this run and be one of the final 4 teams standing for yet another season. You have the play of Tony Dorsett, their Pro Bowl running back, who finished first in the NFC with 745 rushing yards in 9 games, and only trailed Freeman McNeil of the New York Jets for the top total in all of football by a mere 41 yards. If you want to learn more about Dorsett and his 1982 season, click the card in the upper right corner. You had a dominant defensive line that recorded 32 sacks, finishing the season with the 3rd most sacks in football and the most in the NFL. You had the great coaching of the legendary Hall of Famer Tom Landry, and you can learn more about Landry, his incredible career with the Cowboys, and how brilliant he was by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And you had arguably the best cornerback in football in Everson Walls, who 1 year after leading the NFL in interceptions with 11, came right back and did it again by leading the league with 7 picks, and making it to his 2nd Pro Bowl in 2 seasons. The Cowboys were an incredibly talented team, and that goes without saying, and a bunch of people contributed to this. But the most important and most influential person in their success during the 1982 playoffs to get them to the NFC Championship, amazingly enough, might not have been a player on the roster. Heck, it might not have even been a person on the roster. Rather, it was just some ordinary dentist. A random dentist was called into duty just hours before the Cowboys were set to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the first round of the Super Bowl tournament, and he wound up saving Dallas' season in the process. Prepare yourselves for an absolutely insane story about starting quarterback and punter Danny White and the dentist that changed everything and just added to the craziness of the 1982 campaign. This is the story behind the dentist that saved the 1982 Cowboys. Before I talk about the actual game in question and how a dentist came in to save the day, we need some context to understand the situation going into the game, as well as the main player involved. It's January 9th, 1983, and it's the first round of the NFL playoffs, or the Super Bowl tournament, between the Dallas Cowboys and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers down at Texas Stadium. And as much of an asterisk as you want to put on this season, this game was still a big deal, because at the end of the day, this was a playoff game, where the winner moves on and the loser goes home, with their season being over. And to say that Dallas at 6-3 was a heavy favorite to win this game over 5-4 Tampa Bay would be a massive understatement, as the Cowboys were favored by 2 possessions. In fact, the game was projected to be so bad that since these games in the first round were regionally televised, and this Cowboys-Buccaneers game was the game being shown to the majority of the country, CBS officials told the Vikings that they would switch over to the Vikings-Falcons game airing at the same time if Dallas blows out Tampa Bay. As Vikings head coach Bud Grant said, they said if Dallas blows them out, they'll come back to us. They didn't say if Tampa blows out Dallas. No one was giving the Bucs much of a chance, and it's not hard to see why, considering how good the Cowboys were, considering the fact that the Cowboys had never lost a game to the Bucs in franchise history, and the fact that when these teams met in the playoffs last year, in one of the ugliest playoff games on record, the Cowboys won 38-0, completely decimating Tampa Bay in the process. And one of the big reasons why the Cowboys were such heavy favorites going into this contest was because of the play of this man right here. This is the starting quarterback for the Cowboys, Danny White. And if you want to learn more about him and just how great and underrated of a career he had while playing for the team, click the card in the upper right corner. Danny White first played for the Cowboys in 1976, and played all the way until Tom Landry's final season in 1988. So he spent 13 seasons with the team in some capacity. And if you ask people to name the best of his 13 seasons, where he was a household name in the football universe, odds are most people would say 1982. Because during that 1982 season, he truly was one of the best quarterbacks in all of football. He was always a good quarterback after filling in for the gigantic shoes that Hall of Famer Roger Staubach left behind. But 1982 was when he really elevated his play from good to great, and truly became a feared player in the eyes of many. During the 9-game 1982 season, he had 2,079 yards, which was 4th in the NFL, only behind Dan Fouts, Joe Montana, and Ken Anderson. He threw 16 touchdown passes, which was 4th in the NFL, and was just one off the lead, which was a 3-way tie at 17 touchdowns with Dan Fouts, Joe Montana, and Terry Bradshaw. He completed 63.2% of his passes, which amongst all qualified quarterbacks was also 4th, only behind Ken Anderson, Joe Theismann, and Steve Bartkowski. And he finished the season with a passer rating of 91.1, which was, you guessed it, 4th in the NFL, only behind Ken Anderson, Dan Fouts, and Joe Theismann. For all the soccer fans out there, if you want to know the human embodiment of Arsenal in the second half of the 2000s and the first half of the 2010s, it was Danny White in 1982. Because in literally every major statistical category, he finished 4th in the NFL. And for his efforts, White was named a Pro Bowler for the first and only time in his career, a second-team All-Pro by the Associated Press for the first and only time in his career, and received votes for MVP and Offensive Player of the Year for the first and only time in his career. There's a reason why the Cowboys had the top offense in the NFC, and it was because the man under center commanding the ship, Danny White, was that good. Not that you could ever forget about Roger Staubach, but if there was ever a year where you could, it was his 1982 season. Now, White was a bit banged up heading into this game, which is the last thing you want to hear out of your starting quarterback. And it wasn't just a sore thigh that he was dealing with toward the end of the regular season. On Thursday, January 6th, just 3 days before the game, White was practicing, and he injured his right thumb. He jammed it during a drill when he hit Randy White's helmet, and it hurt really badly. However, White was a warrior, and he said he was going to play in the game, since it wasn't broken. As White said on the injury, "I fully expect to play. It doesn't feel like it's broken. If it's just a matter of being a little painful, and there's not much chance of doing any damage to it, I'll play." But things got significantly worse the next day, when the thumb ballooned to twice its normal size, which is kind of important, because you can't exactly grip a football and throw it hard and long when your thumb is messed up like that. White said the day after the injury, "Can I grip a ball right now? Gosh, no. If the game was today, there's no way. Right now, I couldn't throw a football if I had to." Just like that, White was a game-time decision for this game, 48 hours before kickoff. But just hours before the game, his status was now doubtful, and it had absolutely nothing to do with the thumb injury. Because on Saturday night going into Sunday morning, the thumb injury was now the least of his concerns. And what happened next is one of the craziest stories you're ever going to hear about a quarterback prior to a playoff game. It was 12 hours before game time, as it was 3 a.m., and Danny White couldn't help but be scared of it all. In fact, he was so scared that he didn't think that the rain was going to wash away. He didn't believe this. Because at 3 a.m., White woke up with an incredibly sharp pain. But it wasn't a pain from his already beaten up thumb. It was a pain from his mouth. At first, White had no idea why he was in pain, but realized that it was one of the most painful feelings in the world that I think most people can relate to. He had a toothache. As someone that has had a toothache before, I can attest to just how painful it is. And if it was enough to make a professional football player with a high pain threshold wake up in the middle of the night and be in excruciating pain and not be able to fall back to sleep, you know it's really bad. So you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, toothaches suck, there's no denying that. But just find a dentist, get it fixed, and voila. It doesn't fix the thumb injury, and doesn't fix the fact that you're working on no sleep, but problems solved to an extent. There was just one small problem. This was on a Sunday, and dentists don't really work on Sundays. If this pain took place on a weekday, or even on a Saturday, fine. This is a non-story. But the fact that this was on a Sunday meant that White was completely screwed. He was already in pain from his thumb, and was still a game-time decision as it was. And now, you add this toothache into the mix, and there was no way he was going to play. And while having dentists for the team is commonplace today, it's not like the Cowboys had a team dentist on staff back in 1982. With the pain not subsiding from the tooth, and with the pain only getting worse, the only way he was going to play was if he could somehow find a dentist that was working on a Sunday. He was completely out of luck. Or was he? Because as it turned out, White worked the job in the offseason, as a lot of players did back then, as the money was nowhere near what it was today, just in case you were wondering why the players were willing to go on strike for more money. And in the building that he worked in, there was a dentist office. At noon, 3 hours before the game, while a lot of the team was at the stadium, getting ready to suit up, White was on the phone, making the most important phone call of his life. It was a last-ditch effort, but it was his only shot. Could the dentist that worked in White's building see him on a Sunday in an emergency situation? Sure enough, he could. And the funny part was that the dentist, who was nameless, had plans that Sunday that he was in the process of doing when he got the call. Guess what the dentist was doing that Sunday? He was about to drive to Texas Stadium to watch his Cowboys play. The dentist thought he was just going to be a regular old fan on this January day, rooting on his team in the playoffs. Now, for football fans across the country, without even realizing it, he was the most important person in America. The dentist saw White about 2 hours before kickoff, diagnosed the problem, which was an infected molar, scraped the molar, cleaned the molar, gave him a painkiller, and then, in something that seems straight out of a movie that seems too good to be true, told White, "I'll be at the stadium. Call me if you need me." Just like that, White was given Novocaine, and while he was still in pain, he was now able to give it a shot and play. As White said on the Novocaine, "That made me notice how much my thumb hurt." But just to recap, the dentist was commuting from his home to the stadium and took a pit stop at his office to fix up the franchise quarterback so that he could play. White arrived to the stadium somewhat on the later side, but even though he arrived in excruciating pain, he arrived with a mission in mind. He was going to play in this game and will his team to victory, no matter what it took. And sure enough, when the final whistle sounded in this first round game of the Super Bowl tournament, it was the Cowboys who came out on top, and it was the Cowboys who emerged as the victors, as they won this game by a final score of 30-17. Did Danny White play great in this game? I wouldn't go that far. He had trouble with pocket presence, getting sacked 6 times. He had one fumble that went for a touchdown, which was shades of Jameis Winston at the Rose Bowl against Oregon, and was one of the worst plays I've ever seen a quarterback make in the playoffs, and he threw 2 interceptions as well. However, once we got to the 2-minute warning in the second half, he settled down and played a great game after that, and played a big part in why the Cowboys won this game. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. White finished the game going 27 for 45, throwing for 312 yards and 2 touchdowns, with a 6-yard touchdown pass to Ron Springs at the end of the first half, giving the Cowboys the lead going into the halftime break, and a 10-yard touchdown pass to Timmy Newsome in the fourth quarter being the dagger, and putting the game completely out of reach. The 312 yards passing was his second highest total of the season, only trailing the 347 yards he had on the opening night of the season on Monday Night Football in a 36-28 loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and was the most yards he had in a victory all year. Additionally, it was just the 4th time in his career, including the playoffs, that he crossed the 300-yard mark. So to do that in the playoffs, especially considering these circumstances and his health, is quite impressive. White did everything that he had to do, and commanded the Cowboys to a win when it mattered most, just as he had done all season. And to think that none of this happens, and their season likely comes to a screeching halt if it wasn't for a random dentist. It took an incredible set of circumstances. White needing to be in an office building that had a dentist, White needing to know said dentist, and the dentist needing to be close by, and probably needing to be a Cowboys fan. This dentist was nameless in the stories after the game, but he is nothing short of a Cowboy hero, even if he least expected to be one when he woke up that Sunday. If not for that dentist, White likely does not play in this game, and the Cowboys likely lose because of it, as they would be a completely different team without one of the best signal callers in football under center. But because of this random dentist, this entire story is one that sounds too good to be true. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaguarGator9. To see college football videos, subscribe to JaguarGator8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.